There was something off about the way she smiled at her phone. I didn't notice it at first. Dinner had become a kind of ritualized silence between us. Fork clinks, passing the pepper, the occasional nod when the conversation turned to something safely mundane. But tonight, Emily was glowing. I mean literally. The screen cast a soft light on her face and made her look younger, more alive. Not at me. Not for me. Just different. We sat across from each other at the table like coworkers on a lunch break, silently chewing our way through the baked salmon I'd seasoned with lemon and dill. She'd barely noticed it. She hadn't even commented when I added a splash of that Sauvignon Blanc she liked into the sauce. That used to earn a smile. Sometimes even a flirtatious. "Are you trying to get me drunk?" "No. Nothing." Instead, her fingers danced across her phone screen, a little smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She was wearing that soft green sweater I'd always liked, the one that clung just enough, especially when she leaned over the counter in the morning to grab her coffee. I noticed the way her collarbone peeked through the wide neckline tonight, how her eyes sparkled in that specific way they used to when she was tipsy or freshly kissed. But she wasn't looking at me. "Who's that?" I asked, not casually enough. I meant it to sound offhand, like I wasn't really asking. She didn't look up. "On your phone. You've been smiling at it like it just proposed." That got her attention. She looked at me then, slightly amused, as if I'd walked in on her watching a guilty pleasure show. "It's just Ethan." I let the name sit in my mind a moment. I'd heard it before, her coworker maybe? Or was it from her gym? I couldn't place him exactly, but I knew the name. Knew it wasn't a family member. "Ethan," I repeated slow. "The guy from your office?" She nodded, stabbing at her asparagus with her fork. "Yeah, my friend." There it was, the emphasis. My friend. I tried not to react, but the heat in my stomach was instant. Not quite anger. Not yet. Just that slow, rising sting of something slipping from your hands without you realizing you'd been holding it too loose. "Haven't heard you talk about him much before," I said, chewing the words. "Oh, come on." She finally looked up, a half-smile on her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're not getting jealous, are you?" I forced a laugh, though it came out wrong, more of a scoff. "No, just asking." She tilted her head. "You sure? You sound a little insecure." That word. I swallowed. Insecure is what people say when they want to make your instincts feel like paranoia. It's a conversational stun grenade, lobbed to shut things down before they get serious. I went back to my plate. She went back to her phone, and the silence between us returned. But this time, it wasn't routine. It felt like we were on opposite ends of a chasm, and her phone was the bridge she didn't want me walking across. After dinner, I washed the dishes while she sat on the couch, scrolling. She laughed once, low, like she didn't want me to hear it. But I did. I heard it too clearly. Later that night, I found her in the bathroom with the door closed. Not locked, just barely closed, as if she needed only the illusion of privacy. I could hear the light thrum of her voice. Soft giggles. I knew what she sounded like when she was talking to her sister. This wasn't it. This was the kind of laugh you give someone you want to see shirtless. I stood there a second longer than I should have, and then backed away quietly. I didn't want to be the guy pressing his ear to the door. I didn't want to be that husband. But I couldn't unhear the warmth in her tone, the way she said, "Stop it," like she didn't mean it. Back in the bedroom, I lay on the edge of the mattress, staring at the ceiling fan turning above me in slow, hypnotic rotations. Was I imagining it? We'd been married for 8 years. There were always lulls, quiet stretches, work stress, deadlines, health things. But lately, something else had crept in. Like we weren't drifting apart by accident, but by design. Or desire. I thought back to the last time we had sex. 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. It was good, I think. Mechanical. Like two people going through the motions of something that used to come naturally. She'd kissed me afterward. Lightly. Like she was kissing a memory. The sound of the bathroom door creaked open. I shut my eyes just enough to pretend I was asleep. She patted in, phone still in her hand, the light from it briefly illuminating the room as she walked toward her side of the bed. The scent of her shampoo trailed after her. She still smelled like honey and green tea, clean and sharp, like a woman who knew what effect she had. But the scent didn't make me want to pull her close like it used to. Now it just made me wonder if it was for me anymore. She climbed into bed beside me, careful not to disturb the covers too much. She didn't touch me, and I didn't touch her. I stared into the darkness, listening to the soft taps of her thumb against the screen. When the light finally dimmed and her breathing slowed, I turned to look at her profile, her mouth slightly parted, her hair tucked behind one ear. She looked peaceful, innocent, but her phone sat on the nightstand like a glowing secret. I told myself I was being paranoid, and maybe I was. But something inside me, something old, something primal, whispered otherwise. A tiny crack had formed. I just didn't know yet how wide it would spread. The next morning, I left the house before Emily woke up. I didn't kiss her goodbye. I didn't even stop to look at her in the dim light as she curled beneath the duvet, clutching her phone in one hand like it might whisper secrets to her while she slept. I left the smell of her shampoo and the silence of our room behind, trading them for the honest chill of morning air and the low hum of tires against asphalt. Work had never felt like an escape until now. I pulled into the lot 10 minutes early and sat in the car, watching the office windows light up one by one. My coffee had gone cold. I drank it anyway. Inside, the buzz of printers and distant conversations was a balm. Something real, something routine. I sat at my desk and tried to lose myself in numbers, spreadsheets, and quarterly projections. But my eyes kept wandering. I barely noticed her at first. Hannah. She was standing near the break room, laughing with one of the junior analysts, a mug in her hand. Tall, with dark, striking features and that quiet confidence that made her seem untouchable in the best way. Not flashy, not trying, just there, present in a way I hadn't seen in a while. We'd spoken before, in passing. Polite nods, a few shared meetings. She was sharp, known for her dry humor and her ability to slice through corporate bullshit without flinching. People listened when she spoke. She caught me watching and offered a nod, not a smile. It made me sit up straighter. An hour later, she stopped by my desk. You look like someone told you the budget's been cut again. I forced a chuckle. More like someone told me marriage is a tax bracket, not a bond. She raised an eyebrow. Dark, but fair. That should have been the end of it. But she lingered. You want to talk about it? I doubt HR would appreciate it. She leaned a little closer, lowering her voice. Lucky for you. I've never cared much about HR. That got a smile out of me. We started talking more after that. It began with work things, minor project gripes, Slack messages that turned into coffee runs that turned into sitting on the bench outside the building for an extra 10 minutes in the afternoon sun. But soon the topic shifted, from vendor delays to sleep schedules, from productivity to partners. So, Emily, she said one afternoon, sipping a cold brew through a green straw. That's the wife, right? Yeah, I answered, hesitating. She waited. She's complicated lately. Lately, she echoed, watching me carefully. Or always. I laughed, bitter. I used to know the difference. There was a beat of silence. Then she said, you don't have to tell me. But if you do, I won't try to fix it. That was the moment I started breathing again. Because I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to just listen. I told her about Ethan, or at least, the pieces of him I knew. The name, the late-night giggles, the emotional distance that had started to feel like a chasm. Let me guess, Hannah said. He's just a friend. I met her eyes. You've met the type. I was the type once, she admitted, no shame in her tone. Best friends don't text haha stop with 3 PS unless they want to be F edition. I snorted. You really don't believe in sugarcoating anything, do you? Not when it comes to women who want to fuck other people, but keep the wedding ring on for insurance. There it was, the honesty. Blunt, almost brutal, but somehow comforting. She wasn't trying to diagnose me. She wasn't telling me to forgive or fight. She was just present. We began eating lunch together. Not every day, but often enough that people noticed. I didn't care. At least with Hannah, I wasn't thinking about Emily's locked phone or how her laughter sounded like it belonged to someone else. One Friday, Emily canceled movie night. Again, Ethan had a rough day, she said from the kitchen, barely glancing up from her phone. He's going through a lot with his sister, so I'm going to stop by his place. He needs support. I stared at her, waiting for her to flinch, to see me. But she didn't. I'll see you later, okay? She kissed my cheek, but it felt like a lie. As soon as the door closed, I pulled out my phone and texted Hannah. You free tonight? Her reply came in under 30 seconds. Always. That one word shouldn't have hit as hard as it did, but it landed like a revelation. We met at a small bar near the river. Low lights, wood paneling, The kind of place where no one asked questions and no one cared if you laughed too loud or stayed too long. She was already at the bar when I arrived. Hair down, dark lipstick, a black blouse that clung to her shoulders in ways I hadn't realized I noticed before. When she saw me, her lips curved, not into a polite smile, but something else, something curious, like I was a book she wanted to finish reading. "Damn," she said as I sat down. "You clean up well." I laughed. "You haven't seen me in a suit." "Don't need to." Her eyes flicked down, just once, and lingered a moment too long to be accidental. "I prefer honest clothes." We ordered drinks. Talked. Not about work. Not even about Emily. About music, books, bad takeout orders, the worst dates we'd ever been on. I told her about my hatred for cilantro, and she mocked me for 10 straight minutes. She told me she'd broken up with a guy once because he hummed during sex, and I damn near choked on my beer. The space between us got smaller, literally and otherwise. By the third drink, her knee brushed mine. She didn't move it. Neither did I. She looked at me and said, "You know what's funny?" "What?" "You haven't looked at your phone once." I blinked, realized it was true. "That's how I know you're not trying to prove anything." "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight, I just needed to feel real." Her eyes softened. "You do." When she touched my arm, it was barely a graze, but I felt it everywhere. I don't remember when it shifted from subtle to open. Maybe it was the third night Emily fell asleep at Ethan's while watching documentaries. Her makeup still pristine when she came home at noon the next day. Or maybe it was when I stopped asking where she was going. That was the more dangerous milestone. Not when she lied, but when I stopped caring enough to challenge the lie. Her friendship with Ethan took on a rhythm. Inside jokes she never explained. Playlists on our shared Spotify account suddenly filled with ambient indie artists I'd never heard of. One morning I saw she'd added a song titled, "When You're With Him, Do You Think of Me?" Subtlety was no longer the point. At dinner, she'd text under the table, her face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not when she looked at me, anyway. "Ethan sent me the funniest meme," she'd say, chuckling to herself. God, his sense of humor is twisted. I didn't ask to see it. I knew better now. Instead, I mirrored her behavior. It started small, a comment on Hannah's Instagram story, a coffee with her on Saturday morning when Emily claimed she had yoga. But then the symmetry began to grow sharper. A Thursday happy hour. A selfie at a rooftop lounge with Hannah's hand casually on my shoulder. I made sure Emily saw it. The next morning, she passed me the butter without looking up from her phone. "You're spending a lot of time with Hannah lately," she said flatly. I shrugged. "We work together. She gets it." She hummed, unimpressed. "You're acting different." Am I? I took a bite of toast, slow and deliberate. Or am I just adjusting? She looked at me then, really looked at me. "You're keeping score." I didn't blink. Maybe I'm just learning the rules. The room went quiet. Even the dog seemed to sense the electricity tightening between us. I thought she might yell. Instead, she stood and cleared her plate, her movements clean and mechanical, like a waitress at the end of a shift. Neither of us said anything more that morning. But from that moment on, the scoreboard existed. And we both played to win. I'll admit it, a part of me enjoyed the balance. Not revenge. Not yet. But the weight of things starting to feel less one-sided. I'd spent months watching her drift, wondering if I was crazy, if maybe I'd become so dull she simply forgot how to look at me with hunger. Then one evening, I caught my own reflection in the mirror after coming home from drinks with Hannah. Face flushed, eyes alive, shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest I'd stopped caring what Emily thought. That version of me. He looked dangerous. And I liked him. Hannah and I weren't sleeping together. Not then. But the emotional current between us had turned unmistakable. There were glances that lingered too long, conversations that dipped into intimacy, then climbed out quickly, like swimmers avoiding the deep end. And beneath all of it, there was this shared understanding, this sense that we were both orbiting something unspoken. One night, I dropped her off outside her apartment. She didn't get out right away. "I meant what I said," she murmured, tracing her finger along the rim of her coffee cup. "You deserve to feel chosen." That word stuck with me. Chosen. Because that's what it felt like Emily had stopped doing, choosing me. Day by day, she'd chosen Ethan instead. Chosen his texts, his voice, his company, his jokes, his late-night comfort. And me? I was the default setting, the husband-shaped piece of furniture. But Hannah? She looked at me like I mattered. like I hadn't become invisible. That weekend, Emily canceled our plans again. We were supposed to go to a farmer's market. Instead, she said Ethan needed help packing. He was moving apartments. Convenient. I didn't argue. Instead, I texted Hannah. Me. She bailed again. You free? Hannah. Always. We met at the boardwalk, walking side by side as the sun slipped below the skyline. At one point, she touched my arm when she laughed, and I felt that touch for the rest of the night. When I got home, Emily was already in bed, pretending to sleep. But her breathing wasn't deep. She wasn't relaxed. She knew I'd been out. She knew it wasn't alone. And for once, I didn't care if she knew. The next day, she left her phone face up on the kitchen counter. That was new. The screen lit up with a message preview. Ethan, I had a dream about you last night. Dangerous one. I looked at it, then looked away. Emily walked in, caught my expression, and her face didn't even twitch. She reached for the phone, turned it over. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. That silence was louder than any confession. Over time, we became experts in indirect warfare. She'd take a selfie in the car and post it to her story with a song lyric I knew was meant for Ethan. Something about lips tasting like sin. I'd reply to one of Hannah's stories with a fire emoji, just visible enough for Emily to notice when she checked my notifications. She'd leave for the gym in full makeup and lace underwear. I'd come home late, smelling like a bar she'd never been to. We stopped sharing calendars, stopped asking who we were meeting. Our texts became transactional, groceries, reminders, the occasional "did you feed the dog?" Love had left the building, and pride moved in. Neither of us wanted to be the one who blinked first. Neither of us wanted to admit that we were hurting. But we were. God, we were. One night, I stood in the hallway, just outside the bathroom door, listening to her laugh again. That giggle I used to love, now aimed somewhere else. I stared at the photos on the wall. Our honeymoon in Greece. Her hand in mine on the Santorini cliffs, eyes closed, smile honest. I barely recognized that girl now. And I didn't recognize myself either. I went to bed without saying goodnight. When she finally slipped in beside me, the mattress barely moved. But I heard her breath catch when I shifted, just enough to make her wonder if I was dreaming of someone else. And the truth? I was. But it wasn't revenge I wanted. It was clarity. I was tired of games. Tired of rules. But most of all, I was tired of playing second to a man I hadn't even met. There's something dangerous about 11:47 p.m. It's not quite midnight, not far enough into tomorrow to call your choices a new day, but late enough that your excuses start to unravel. That's when Hannah texted me. Still up? I was. Not because I wanted to be, but because Emily hadn't come home yet. She'd said she was helping Ethan pack, which had become her go-to excuse these days. Apparently, Ethan couldn't lift a box or tape a moving label without my wife's emotional support. The joke I never said out loud. If he packed as many boxes as lies, he'd be long gone. I stared at the message from Hannah. Still up? My thumb hovered over the keyboard longer than I'd admit. Then, yeah, can't sleep. The response came almost instantly. Same. Want company or silence? That question shouldn't have hit as hard as it did. But it did. It hit like she just kicked the air out of the lonely part of my chest. Both. Be there in 10. I didn't clean the house. I didn't fix my hair. I didn't change out of the soft gray t-shirt Emily always said made me look worn in. Hannah had seen worse. She'd seen me after work with sunken eyes and unshaved regret. She still came back. When I opened the door, she was holding 2 gas station coffees like they were peace offerings. This is either poison or therapy, she said, lifting the cups. I'll let you decide. I stepped aside. I'll take therapy, but keep the poison close. I may change my mind. She smiled, tired but real. No makeup, no pretense. Just her hair pulled back and a hoodie that smelled faintly like citrus and old cologne. We settled on the couch. Not close enough to touch. Not far enough to pretend we didn't want to. I sipped the coffee. Burnt. Terrible. Perfect. She's not back yet. Hannah asked softly. I shook my head. Nope. Probably sleeping on a box at Ethan's. Her lips pressed into a line, somewhere between anger and understanding. She's treating you like an option, she said. I exhaled through my nose. I don't think I even make the list anymore. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The honest kind. The kind that exists between people who've already said the important stuff. After a while, I asked, Why are you here? She turned to me slowly. You know why. And yeah, I did. But I needed to hear it anyway. You shouldn't be, I said. She leaned back, resting her head on the cushion, eyes closed. Then tell me to go. I didn't. Instead, I turned my head and watched her. The curve of her jaw, the slow rise and fall of her chest, the slight twitch of her foot like she was trying not to fidget. She opened her eyes, meeting mine. You ever feel like you're more alive with someone who's not yours? Her words landed like a punch wrapped in silk. Every day now, I admitted. We didn't move for a long time. I thought about the first time I met her. That cynical humor. The unflinching gaze. She didn't flirt like Emily used to. She didn't need to. She just was. Confident. Quietly bold. And the more Emily pulled away, the more Hannah felt like sunlight through closed blinds. Unexpected, warm, almost too much. She shifted, turning slightly toward me, her knee brushing mine. I felt it all the way through me. I shouldn't be here, she said again, softer this time. But you are, I whispered. Our knees stayed pressed together. Neither of us flinched. I hate being the other woman, she said suddenly. You're not, I said. There's no other anymore. She studied me. You say that, but you still wear your ring. I looked down. The gold band was still there, dull under the living room light. I don't know why I haven't taken it off. Hannah's hand moved, not to touch mine, but close. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her skin. It was like sitting next to a fire you're afraid to touch but can't walk away from. I'm not here to break something, she said. I'm here because something's already broken. I swallowed hard. So what are we doing? She smiled, not coy, not playful, just tired. We're surviving. The space between us closed by a breath. Not a kiss, not a confession, just nearness, just the aching hum of almost. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Maybe it was 5 minutes, maybe an hour. I only remember the way her eyes didn't look away, the way her presence made me feel less hollow, the way I realized I hadn't felt wanted, really, deeply wanted, in months. I should go, she said, finally sitting up. Yeah, I murmured, though I didn't want her to. She stood. I followed her to the door. Her hand brushed mine again, a whisper of a touch. Our eyes met. Neither of us said what we were thinking. She stepped outside. The night air curled around her like smoke. Before she turned to go, she said, You deserve more than what you're settling for. And then she was gone. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against it. In the distance, I heard a car start. It wasn't until I turned around that I saw Emily's bag by the stairs. She was home, and I hadn't even noticed. The smell of pancakes should have been comforting. Emily stood at the stove, spatula in hand, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't come home at 3:40 a.m., like a ghost, and disappeared upstairs without a word. Like her bag hadn't sat at the base of the stairs all night, while I leaned against the front door with my heart still humming from Hannah's goodbye. She wore a loose t-shirt and a practiced smile. The kind of smile you wear when you're trying to reset the story. Morning, she said, not looking at me. I pulled a mug from the cabinet. You stayed at Ethan's? A beat, just long enough to register the pause before she answered. No, she said too fast. I just crashed at Vanessa's. We opened wine, lost track of time. My phone died. Her voice was light, flippant, a little too polished. Like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror before I came down. I didn't push, didn't call her out, didn't even ask who Vanessa was. I just nodded and poured my coffee. She watched me, waiting for the explosion. When it didn't come, her smile faltered. I texted you, she added. No, you didn't. Well, I meant to. I took a slow sip and stared out the window. The tension between us was no longer sharp. It was dull now, like the weight of a wet coat you never took off. I'm grabbing dinner with Hannah tonight, I said, casual. We've both been swamped, and it's overdue. Emily's back stiffened, just slightly. Hannah, she repeated. Yeah. A long pause. Then, that's interesting timing. I looked at her. Is it? She turned the burner off with more force than necessary. You do realize how this looks, right? Enlighten me. She faced me fully now, arms crossed. You're spending all your time with this woman. Someone who clearly wants more than just friendship. And now you're having dinner? After accusing me of doing the same thing with Ethan? I raised an eyebrow. Did I accuse you? She didn't answer. Because I seem to remember you telling me Ethan's just a friend. Are we not allowed to have friends now? She stepped forward. Don't play smart. You're doing this out of spite. I met her eyes, calm but unflinching. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just following your rules. What rules? I set my mug down gently. The mirror rule. I treat you how you treat me. You get secrecy, I get distance. You get closeness with someone else, so do I. You disappear without a text, so do I. That's immature. No, I said, voice low. It's honest. She didn't move. Neither did I. The morning light stretched between us like a barrier. Are you trying to punish me? She asked, quieter now. No. I leaned against the counter, hands in my pockets. I'm trying to remind myself I exist. Her breath caught at that. For a moment, I saw the tiniest flicker of guilt, real, unfiltered, pass behind her eyes. Then she turned back to the stove, busying herself with plates. The conversation was over, but the war had just begun. That night, I left before she could ask what time I'd be home. Henna met me at a small Thai place downtown, the kind with dim lighting and narrow tables where knees accidentally brush under candlelight. She wore something soft and black, not flashy, but flattering in that effortless way that makes you feel like someone dressed for you. Her earrings caught the light every time she laughed, and I made her laugh a lot. For the first hour, we didn't mention Emily or Ethan. It was easier to pretend we were just two people leaning into something new, something clean. But the truth pressed at the edges. Finally, after the second round of drinks, she asked, "So, what happened this morning?" I told her. The lie. The half-truth. The pancakes. She nodded slowly. That's her move. Play domestic. Pretend she still gets to be your wife without doing any of the work. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Then Hannah leaned in, voice low, intimate. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you trying to make her jealous? I swallowed. I don't know. Because if you are, I'm not interested in being a pawn. I looked at her, really looked. You're not. She studied me for a long moment. Good. We finished dinner. Neither of us rushed to leave. Outside, the city hummed around us. Cool night air brushing between us, the quiet hush of possibility. She glanced at me under the streetlight. You coming up? There it was. A door, half open. I hesitated. And for the first time in weeks, I was honest with myself. No, I said gently. Not tonight. Her smile wasn't disappointed. It was something better. It was understanding. Good, she said. Because when you finally do, I want it to be for you, not for her. We stood there for another minute. A single minute that said more than any touch. Then I kissed her cheek. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally seeing someone and being seen. When I got home, Emily was curled up on the couch, watching a show we used to love together. She didn't pause it when I walked in. Dinner good? She asked without turning her head. It was. She nodded. That's nice. She said nothing else. And neither did I, because the mirror had been set between us. And now, it was up to both of us what we saw staring back. It happened by accident. If you'd asked me the day before, I would have said I didn't want proof. Proof meant consequences. It meant no more pretending, no more playing house with dead feelings and half-hearted routines. But the truth? Part of me had been waiting for this. She was in the shower. I was walking past the bed, heading to grab my keys when her phone lit up beside the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop. Not then. I swear to God, I just glanced. But the screen didn't flash with a reminder or a spam email. It glowed with a name I already hated. Ethan. And the message? Can't stop thinking about last night. Still taste you. I didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Didn't need to. The bubble of doubt I'd been living in finally popped, and the silence that followed was loud enough to shake me. I picked up the phone. For a moment, I told myself I shouldn't. But the rules were gone now. Burned up. Ashes on the floor. I tapped the thread. At first, just words. Flirty, edgy, filled with the kind of inside jokes that had once belonged to me. Then pictures. Some tame, some not. Then voice notes. His voice, smooth, confident, private. Her laugh in response. Her voice, hushed and intimate, promising things. Then the worst. You're right. I needed last night. I missed how it feels with you. Not rushed. Not mechanical. My hands went cold. I scrolled, searching for some out-of-context redemption. A message that said it was all a joke. A fight. A misstep they regretted. Instead, I found timestamps. One from the night she told me she was helping him pack. One from the weekend I'd taken the dog to the vet alone because she said she was catching up on errands. It wasn't emotional intimacy anymore. They'd had sex. More than once. And she'd come home. slept beside me, kissed me, lied in ways that felt like violence. I set the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I walked out the front door. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay. I drove for hours without music, just the sound of tires against pavement and the heartbeat in my throat. No destination, no plan, just motion. Eventually, I found myself in front of Hannah's apartment. I didn't even remember turning onto her street. But there I was, parked, breathing hard, ashamed and exhausted. Rage flickering somewhere beneath the surface, but not hot anymore, just cold and steady. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes before I texted, "You home?" Her reply came fast. "Yes, come up." She opened the door before I knocked. The second she saw me, she knew. She didn't ask questions, didn't offer sympathy or fury. She just stepped aside and let me in. The light was dim, soft amber from a corner lamp. Her place smelled like lavender and something baking, sweet, comforting. I collapsed on the edge of her couch. My hands were still trembling. "She slept with him," I said finally. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. Saying it made it real. Hannah didn't gasp, didn't say "I told you so." She just sat beside me, close but not touching, and waited. I read the messages. It wasn't emotional anymore. It was full-on, detailed. My voice cracked a little, and I hated that it did. "I gave her the benefit of the doubt for so long," I said. "I told myself it was nothing, that I was being insecure, that I was imagining it. But she was in love with him. Or maybe not. I don't know. Does it even matter?" Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "No, because you were in pain, and she didn't stop." That was it. No metaphor. No therapy. Just the truth. I let my head fall into my hands. Was I not enough? She touched my wrist. Not tightly. Not claiming. Just there. "You were more than enough," she said. "You were just with someone who wanted something else and didn't have the courage to leave before taking more." I looked at her then. Really looked. Hannah wasn't saving me. She wasn't here to patch the wound. She was just present. Steady. Safe. But not passive. And I needed that more than anything. "I feel like an idiot," I whispered. "You're not." She made me feel like I was going crazy. "I know." I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. Then I asked, barely audible, "What happens now?" She looked at me carefully. "That depends. What do you want?" I didn't know. Maybe I wanted to rage. Maybe I wanted to scream at Emily, to throw her words back in her face. Maybe I wanted her to admit it all, to beg for forgiveness she didn't deserve. Or maybe I just wanted to stop bleeding over someone who never cared that I was cut open. "I want to stop playing this game," I said. Hannah nodded. "Then stop competing with her." I turned to her. "And what if I already lost?" "You didn't," she said. "You just changed what winning looks like." Her hand was still on my wrist. And when she leaned in and kissed me, it wasn't fast. It wasn't angry. It wasn't revenge. It was rescue. The kind that doesn't scream or claw or demand. The kind that just says, "I see you, and you're safe now." I didn't sleep with her. We didn't cross that line. But we curled up on her couch in the dark, her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in what felt like months, I stopped checking the time. I didn't text Emily. I didn't care where she was. All I cared about was the silence. Not empty, but peaceful. Not heavy, just still. And when I finally closed my eyes, I didn't dream about catching her anymore. I dreamed of letting go. Emily knew. Not in the way someone knows after catching you in a lie. Not with evidence or a message or lipstick on a collar. She knew the way animals sense earthquakes. Subtle changes in the air. Cracks in the ground. I came home the morning after staying at Hannah's. I hadn't told her where I was going the night before. I didn't leave a note. And for once, I didn't care what that silence looked like. She was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling absently through her phone when I walked in. A half-empty cup of coffee in front of her. Her hair was still messy from sleep, but her eyes were alert. Wide. Watching. "You didn't come home," she said without looking up. I dropped my keys on the counter. "No, I didn't." She stared at her screen for another beat, then locked it and set it down slowly. "Did you stay with her?" I said nothing. That was enough. Her eyes didn't widen in shock. No trembling lip. No gasped betrayal. Just a flicker of something that looked a lot like defeat. She nodded once, as if checking off a box on a list she'd already written. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. "How long?" she asked. I took a breath. Nothing happened. Not like that. But something did. Yes. She looked down at her hands. Turned her wedding ring once. Then again. I guess I deserve that. No, I said. You deserve honesty. That's what you never gave me. Her head jerked slightly. Excuse me. You lied, Emily. You gaslit me. You made me question my instincts every time I brought him up. And all that time, it was already happening. She stood, voice rising. So now what? You get to play the victim just because you finally grew a backbone and cheated back? I didn't cheat, I said sharply. Not until you made it clear I wasn't in this marriage alone anymore. Oh, so this is my fault now. I stepped closer, not backing down. You started sleeping with someone else and kept pretending I was the problem. Do you know how insane that made me feel? Watching you disappear, night after night, while I was still trying to fight for us. She flinched, and for the first time, I saw something crack in her. She sank back onto the stool, burying her face in her hands. I didn't want it to happen, she said. Her voice was hoarse. It wasn't planned. I believe that, I said. But you didn't stop it either. Silence. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her breathing. I didn't know how to come back from it, she whispered. I thought if I just pretended long enough, we'd be okay. You stopped choosing me. That was it. The sentence that had been building for months. You stopped choosing us. She looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. And now you're choosing her? I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. The next few days felt like walking through rubble. We stopped speaking unless we had to. The space between us and the house widened. I moved into the guest room. She stopped pretending Ethan was just a friend. There were no more stories about helping him move or listening to his family drama. There was just silence. And Hannah, she didn't ask me to define what we were. She didn't push. She didn't try to win. When I told her I was sleeping in the guest room now, she only said, "Don't rush. Let the dust settle." But she was my anchor. When the guilt started to creep in, that heavy, cloying feeling like I'd become the villain too, she grounded me. You're allowed to grieve and still move forward, she said one night as we sat on her balcony. You can feel pain without carrying all of it. But we were born from something broken. She nodded. So are most strong things. Scars hold skin together. We weren't lovers. Not yet. But we were more. And that made me feel both hopeful and heavy. Because deep down, I knew something had changed forever. One evening, Emily came home late. I heard her heels click across the hardwood, then stop outside the guest room door. I didn't open it. She stood there for a moment before finally speaking. Are you going to leave? Her voice wasn't sharp this time, just tired. I opened the door and looked at her. She was still in her work clothes. Makeup faded, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Eventually, I said, I don't want to keep pretending this house still holds something it doesn't. Tears welled in her eyes. And for a second, I saw the version of her I married. Not the version who laughed at her phone while I cooked dinner alone. Not the version who reeked of a stranger's cologne. Just Emily. Raw. Wounded. Small. But it wasn't enough to make me forget. She stepped forward like she wanted to touch me. I stepped back. I can't do that, I said. She nodded. I don't hate you, I added. But I can't love you like this anymore. She wiped her face. And her. I paused. She didn't break us. You did. I just stopped pretending we weren't broken. That silence again. But this time, there was nothing left beneath it. Later that night, I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ghost of everything we used to be settle into the walls like dust. It was over. Even if we didn't say the word. It was over. And somewhere across town, Hannah was probably curled up with a book and a blanket, not knowing how much she had already become the only honest thing in my life. It ended on a Tuesday. No build-up, no dramatic betrayal in the middle of the night. Just a cold, gray Tuesday. One of those days that feels like the sky forgot how to be anything but heavy. I was in the kitchen, making coffee. Emily walked in wearing one of her favorite old sweatshirts, the faded college one I used to steal when it still smelled like her shampoo and safety. It didn't anymore. It just looked like a memory trying too hard to still exist. She didn't say anything right away, just filled a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching me with this look I'd come to recognize, like she was working through a script in her head before saying it aloud. Then she spoke. You're seeing her, aren't you? I didn't look up from the mug I was filling. Yes. Silence. Just that one syllable, flat, unembellished, final. It might have landed softer if I'd lied. Might have stung less if I'd hesitated. But I didn't. And she knew that meant everything. Her voice cracked. So that's it. I turned to face her, mug in hand. No. That was it months ago. This is just the first time we're both being honest about it. She flinched, but she didn't deny it. I think we were both too tired for that now. She set her glass down harder than she meant to. The sharp clink of it against the granite made both of us flinch. I made mistakes, she said, but I didn't think you'd replace me. That's the difference between us. I replied, my voice low. You started lying while still asking me to act like nothing was broken. I didn't replace you. You stepped out and never came back. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she held them. Emily never cried easily. She always waited until she was alone. In the shower, behind a closed door, somewhere no one could call it weakness. You were my husband, she said, like the word still meant something. And you were my wife, I said calmly. But you chose someone else. Over and over. Her voice shook. You could have fought for me. I did. My voice rose, just slightly. I tried. I asked questions. I offered space. I swallowed my pride. And every time I looked for you, I found Ethan instead. A pause. Then, I hate what we've become. So do I. The air between us thickened. Not with passion. Not even with anger. With grief. The kind of grief that comes when something you built with your bare hands crumbles while you're still standing inside it. Emily leaned against the counter again, gripping the edge like it was the only thing holding her up. How long has it been happening? She asked. I hesitated. With Hannah? She nodded. I gave her the truth. Not long. Not the way you're thinking. She didn't sleep with me while I still belonged to you. A flicker of something, maybe relief, maybe jealousy, passed across her face. But you love her, she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't lie. I don't know what to call it yet. But it feels more honest than anything we've shared in a long time. That landed hard. She inhaled sharply, then looked away, blinking fast. You used to say I was your home, she whispered. You used to be, I said. But then you locked the door and gave someone else the key. That was it. The moment. The line neither of us would cross back over. She pushed off the counter and walked past me, brisk, decisive. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the thud of her closet door, the unmistakable rustle of a suitcase being pulled out. I didn't follow. There was nothing left to say. By the time I walked upstairs, she had packed 2 bags. Not everything. Just enough. A symbolic departure. She zipped the last one shut and stood there, looking around like she wasn't sure if she was forgetting something important or just pretending she cared. I leaned against the doorframe. You don't have to rush. I do, she said, lifting her gaze. If I stay one more night, I'll start lying to myself again. And I don't want to hate you more than I already do. That's fair. She moved toward the stairs, bags in hand. Halfway down, she turned to look back at me. Her eyes were red now. Finally, you'll always be my first, she said. Even if you weren't my last. I nodded. You'll always be the lesson I had to learn the hard way. She smiled at that. A sad, broken thing. When she reached the front door, she didn't slam it. She just pulled it closed behind her. The sound was worse than a scream. It echoed through the house. Through me. Through everything we'd once called forever. I stood in the living room for a long time after she left. The sun had started to come through the windows, casting shadows on the floor, shadows where we'd once danced barefoot in our pajamas, laughed over spilled coffee, kissed on Sunday mornings just because. The wedding photo on the mantel had fallen face down. I didn't pick it up. Didn't need to. Some things don't belong upright anymore. Some things are more honest when they're left where they land. That night, I texted Hannah. It's over. Her reply came fast. You okay? I didn't know how to answer that. But I told the truth. Not yet. But I will be. Want company? I stared at the message. Then typed. Not tonight. I need to sit in this. Just for a little while. I'll be here when you're ready. I know. And I did. Because for once, I wasn't being dragged under by someone else's lies. I was just breathing. Slow. Shaky. But breathing. The house was quieter without her. Not peaceful. Not yet. Just quieter. Like it had exhaled something it had been holding too long. Her perfume no longer lingered on the pillows. Her shoes weren't by the door. The closet had gaps now, hangers swinging like empty questions. But the silence didn't scare me anymore. It grounded me. The first few days were strange. I kept expecting her to walk back in. Not because I wanted her to, but because my body hadn't caught up to the new reality. I'd pour 2 cups of coffee, set 2 plates for dinner, let the dog out and instinctively look upstairs, half expecting to hear the creak of the bedroom floor. But no one came. And that was okay. Eventually, I took off my wedding ring. Not during some grand symbolic moment. No mirror stare, no dramatic monologue. I just slipped it off in the middle of doing dishes and placed it in the junk drawer between old batteries and expired coupons. It felt right there. Forgotten, but not erased. Like everything else between us. Hannah didn't push. She didn't show up with a suitcase or expectations. She didn't ask when I was going to call the lawyer or if I'd told my parents. She just let me be, hovering at the edges of my chaos, calm and steady. We started small. Lunch on a Saturday, 2 towns over. No labels, no talk of us. Just 2 people breathing easier than before. She ordered the Thai curry, like always, and I remembered she hated cilantro. I picked it off her plate without thinking. She smirked and said, "Guess I'm not the only one who remembers the details." It wasn't romantic, but it felt more real than anything I'd had in months. Later that week, she helped me repaint the living room. Emily had always wanted soft gray. Hannah picked a warmer white with a name like Almond Fog or Wheat Cloud, something aggressively neutral. We spilled paint. We laughed. We fought over whether the TV should be mounted higher. When it was done, the room felt like someone had cracked open a window that had been stuck shut for years. That night, as we sat on the floor with takeout containers between us, she glanced at the empty wall where the wedding photo used to hang. "Gonna put something else there?" I looked at the blank space. Eventually, she nodded, didn't push. That was her gift, letting silence do its work. I started cooking again. Not just scrambled eggs and reheated leftovers. Real cooking. Roasted vegetables. Lemon garlic chicken. Things that required prep and intention. I'd play music while I chopped, fill the house with smells that felt alive again. Hannah would come by and taste everything, giving critiques like she was judging a cooking show. "Too much salt," she'd say with a grin. "Still better than your boxed mac and cheese," I'd shoot back. We were slow, deliberate. There were moments, of course, touches that lingered, glances that hinted at something beneath the surface. But we didn't rush. We didn't ruin it with urgency. We let it breathe. One night, after a long walk with the dog, she paused at the door. "You ever feel like we're building something on ashes?" I thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, but sometimes ashes are the best foundation. They're proof something burned and didn't kill you." She smiled at that. Not wide, not showy, just soft. "I like who you are now," she said. "So do I. But healing isn't a straight line." Some nights, I still woke up shaking. I'd dream of Emily, of walking in on her laughing with Ethan, of hearing her voice whispering things that were meant for me, now belonging to someone else. I'd jolt awake, heart pounding, drowning in a memory that didn't know it was expired. Once, I found myself scrolling old photos, birthdays, vacations, that one weekend in the cabin where we barely left the bed. I don't know what I was looking for. Proof that she had loved me once, maybe. Or maybe just a reason to forgive myself for holding on too long. When I told Hannah, she didn't flinch. She just took my hand. "I'm not here to replace her," she said. "And I won't ask you to forget her. That doesn't bother you?" "No, because I'm not scared of what you loved before. I'm just focused on what you're learning to love now." That was the moment I realized how different she was. Emily always needed to be the only thing that mattered. Hannah just wanted to matter enough. One afternoon, I ran into Emily's sister at the grocery store. We exchanged an awkward hug, the kind you give when you're not sure whose side you're allowed to be on anymore. She looked at me with a softness I hadn't expected. "She's not doing great," she said quietly. "I think she thought it would feel freer than it does." I nodded. "I'm sorry to hear that." "You don't have to be," she replied. "You held on longer than most would have." That stayed with me for days. Not because I wanted to gloat, I didn't. But because someone had seen the version of me that had tried. That mattered more than I thought it would. One evening, Hannah and I were sitting in the backyard, sipping cheap wine, our legs tangled beneath the blanket she insisted on bringing even though it was barely cold out. "You ever think you could do it again?" she asked. "Marriage?" She nodded. I exhaled. "Yeah, but not because I need the label. I just think, when it's right, you stop thinking about definitions. You just show up. Every day. On purpose." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "That's a good answer." We stayed out there until the stars showed up. Not talking, not fixing anything, just being. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't afraid of the quiet anymore. Because it didn't mean something was missing. It meant something was beginning. The message came on a Thursday. I was at work, cleaning out my inbox between meetings when her name popped up on my screen. Emily. I hadn't seen it in weeks. Not since the last formal email from the lawyer about dividing assets. It was short, professional, emotionally hollow. This time, it was a text. Hey, can we talk? No drama. Just closure. I stared at it for a while. Long enough that my coffee went cold. Long enough that my fingers went numb from not moving. Hannah had warned me this might happen. She'll circle back eventually, she'd said one night. Maybe not to get back together, but to make sense of it all. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what I wanted to say. But later that night, after dinner, after a walk, after Hannah had gone home and the house was still, I texted back. Okay. She suggested a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground, not sentimental. I agreed. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with a steaming mug in front of her. She looked different. Not worse. Just less. Less composed. Less curated. Like the version of herself she used to polish so carefully had started to dull. Hey, she said softly as I sat down. Hey. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. We just looked at each other like two people who had once built a home and watched it burn from separate sides. She stirred her coffee slowly, watching the swirl. Then, I'm not here to apologize again. Good, I said. I don't think either of us needs more apologies. She nodded. Silence stretched between us. Not hostile, not awkward, just honest. Then she spoke. I thought Ethan meant freedom. It came out so plainly, so bluntly, I almost didn't know how to respond. I thought he was this open door. A way to breathe again. You and I felt so heavy by the end. Every conversation was a landmine. Every touch felt obligated. I didn't interrupt. She kept going. But once I had the door open, I realized I wasn't walking into something better, just emptier. He didn't make me feel free. He made me feel replaceable. That word hit harder than I expected. She looked up at me. I know I hurt you. I know I dismantled something we spent years building. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just didn't want to leave it all buried. I nodded slowly. I believe you, I said. And I believe you meant what you said when you said you were unhappy. But what hurt most wasn't that you found someone else. It's that you never let me try to be who you needed again. She blinked hard. I didn't know how to ask. Yeah, I said. And by the time I realized how far we drifted, you were already gone. She wiped the corner of her eye with her sleeve. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing you. But the worst thing was watching myself turn into someone you had to recover from. That made my throat tighten. She sighed. I'm not trying to come back, if that's what you're thinking. I'm not here to beg or explain. I just needed to say it out loud to someone who knew the whole version of me. The good and the bad. I get that. And I'm glad you're okay. I gave a soft, honest smile. I'm getting there. A beat of quiet. Then, she seems good for you. I raised an eyebrow. Hannah. She nodded. I saw a picture. You looked lighter. That used to be my favorite version of you. She's gentle, I said, but not soft. She doesn't try to fix me, just makes space for me to figure it out. Emily smiled sadly. I hope she knows what she has. She does, I said, and I don't take it for granted. We finished our drinks in silence. When I stood to leave, she reached out and touched my wrist, lightly, like she used to when we first started dating and everything still felt possible. I don't hate you, she said. I don't hate you either. Even after everything? Especially after everything, I said. Hating you would mean I'm still giving you power. And I'm not. She let go of my wrist. We walked out together, but stopped at the sidewalk. This is goodbye, isn't it? She asked. Yeah, I said. But a peaceful one. She nodded, then turned and walked the opposite way. No dramatic ending. No rainstorm or movie scene hug. Just two people who once shared a life and now shared a parting. That night, I told Hannah about the conversation. We were on my porch, a soft autumn breeze running through the trees, the last hints of summer fading from the air. She reached out. Hannah asked. I nodded. Wanted closure. Did she get it? I think so. She was quiet for a moment. And you? I looked at her. The way the porch light hit her cheek, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was listening closely. Yeah, I said. I think I did too. She didn't ask if I missed Emily. She didn't ask if I felt guilty. She just squeezed my hand and said, then let's stop living in comparison. I turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. No more mirrors, I said. She leaned in, her lips brushing mine, not hungry or urgent, just steady, sure. And when we pulled apart, I realized something I hadn't before. Emily and I had built something that cracked and collapsed. But Hannah and I, we were building something that might bend, might shake, but wouldn't break under the weight of truth. We didn't need to win. We just needed to be real. The sun rose slow over the water, gold bleeding into pale blue. Waves lapped gently at the shoreline, quiet and rhythmic, like the world itself was breathing. I stood barefoot in the cool sand, coffee mug in hand, watching the horizon stretch itself awake. Behind me, Hannah was sketching in her notebook, cross-legged on a beach towel, hair tossed up into a messy bun. She hadn't said much since we arrived. She didn't need to. This trip had been her idea. "Let's go somewhere you've never been," she'd said. "Somewhere that doesn't hold her shadow." So we did. A quiet coastal town. No memories tied to it. No ghosts hiding in doorways. Just us and the sound of the sea. I watched as she tilted her head, shading the curve of a rock jutting from the waterline, her pencil gliding with focus. She looked calm, present. For a long time, I didn't know what peace looked like. Now I did. It looked like this. Like her. Like the way I wasn't waiting for something to break. We'd been together for 6 months now. Enough time to shed the guilt. Enough time to learn each other's edges. She knew when to give me space and when to press her hand to my chest and say, "You're spiraling again." I knew when she needed to feel chosen, not because she demanded it, but because she'd never asked for it out loud. We cooked. We danced in the kitchen. We argued about stupid things like laundry cycles and whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. But everything we built was rooted in truth. There were no more mirrors, no more scorecards, no more pretending. One night, a few weeks before the trip, I'd asked her, "Do you ever feel like we're the rebound?" She laughed, not cruelly, but gently, like she knew I wasn't trying to wound us. "No," she said, "because rebounds are rushed. And we were slow, intentional, careful." She reached over and laced her fingers through mine. "I think we're what happens after the rebound. When you finally know what you won't tolerate and what you won't lose again." She was right. Hannah wasn't the aftermath. She was the answer I didn't know I'd been asking for. On the second night of our trip, we sat out on the cottage deck, wrapped in a blanket as the stars came out. She handed me her sketchbook without a word. I flipped through it slowly. Each page held something from the past few months. Our first dinner out, the living room mid-renovation, my dog curled against her leg on the couch. The last drawing was unfinished. Just an outline of me, standing at the stove, stirring a pot with my back to her. "You always draw me from behind," I said. "It's how I see you most," she replied. "Moving, doing, giving." I flipped back to the beginning. Something pulled at my chest. "These are beautiful. I wanted to show you the version of yourself I see," she said. "The one that doesn't need fixing, just noticing." I stared at the sketch of me holding a paint roller, paint smudged on my jeans. I forgot what that looked like, I admitted. She leaned against me. I didn't. Emily hadn't contacted me again. We'd signed the divorce papers quietly. No courtroom, no drawn-out battles. Just a notary and a mutual understanding that what we had didn't survive the truth. And I'd made peace with that. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much to carry forever. Letting go didn't mean pretending it hadn't shaped me. It meant choosing not to live inside the ruin. That morning, standing on the beach as Hannah sketched behind me, I felt something shift inside me. A soft, subtle click, like a door had finally closed all the way. I turned to look at her. She glanced up from the page, brow raised. "What?" I walked over and knelt beside her. She closed the sketchbook instinctively, smile playing on her lips. "I've been thinking," I said. "Oh no, not like that," I laughed. "Just thinking about mirrors." She tilted her head. I took a breath. I used to think the mirror rule was about revenge, about reflecting back what someone gives you, making them feel the way they made you feel. And now I think it's about reflection, real reflection, seeing clearly, recognizing yourself again. She looked at me, curious and kind. "And who do you see now?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I see someone who finally stopped fighting to be chosen and started choosing himself." She smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just steady, real. "And who do I see?" she asked. I gave her the truth. "You're not my mirror anymore. You're my future." That was it. The final line. The last piece falling into place. We didn't need a ceremony or a speech. Just that moment. Two people, no ghosts, no games. Just presence. She leaned in and kissed me, soft and certain. When we pulled apart, she whispered, "Then let's not look back." I nodded. "Let's look forward." We packed up our things and walked up the beach together, hand in hand. No more reflections. Only light.